Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, the draft show. Max Chadwick, PJ Clark, Nick Merriam, and Tate Sigworth. Going over another scouting report, Jaylen Waddle, Alabama's who fractured his ankle and will probably miss the rest of the season for the Crimson Tide. We're going to go over his strengths, his weaknesses, where he ranks for us on his boards, get player comps for him, and ultimately how this injury affects his draft stock. Of course, be sure to follow our Twitter at Boomer Bust Draft and Reddit at Boomer Bust Draft Show. We're on YouTube, Spotify. We got a website as well. And of course, please like and subscribe to the channel as well. So let's go over the background for Jaylen Waddle. He's a junior. He's 5'10", 182 pounds, former four-star recruit, 39 overall, number 5 wide receiver in 2018. Second team AP All-American last year as an all-purpose player. He won SEC Freshman of the Year in 2018. And in 3 years, he had 105 catches for 1,965 yards and 17 touchdowns. His 19.1 yards per catch are second most in Alabama history behind Ozzie Newsome. Also has 3 return touchdowns and averaged 19.3 yards per return, most in Alabama history by nearly 6 yards. So PJ, let's start with you. When you watch Jaylen Waddle, what do you like the most?
I think the thing that stands out to me is the speed. It's why he's an all-purpose player, and it's why he's going to go in the top 15 of this draft, is because we had Henry Ruggs last year to Jerry Jeudy's finesse. We have Devontae Smith's finesse this year and Jaylen Waddle's speed. And Jaylen Waddle, I actually feel bad. If you recall some of our past content that we can no longer talk about, I was a big Henry Ruggs guy. I feel bad, but comparing Jaylen Waddle to Henry Ruggs is like an insult to Jaylen Waddle. He is worlds better than Ruggs was at this point. I love Jaylen Waddle. The speed is the thing that breaks off. You said he averaged almost 20 yards per catch. He led the country in punt return yards this year. Get the ball in this guy's hands. He's going to do good things. He was on pace to break Amari Cooper's receiving record this year before breaking his ankle for Alabama. You can tell me how great Devontae Smith is. I'm lower on him than the rest of you. Jaylen Waddle is so much clearly better than him and is one of my favorite players in this class.
Yeah, I mean, PJ talked about it a little there. He's an unreal yak guy. Everybody loves a good yak guy. You get the ball in his hands, and he's going to do things with his speed, with his athleticism. It's kind of like CeeDee Lamb-like in terms of last year. If you were following our content, I was a big CeeDee Lamb guy just in terms of yak. But yeah, he's a vertical burner. He's got crazy speed. The kick returning as well is a huge plus. And I think he has pretty good route running, honestly. You didn't see a lot of it last year because he was kind of serving as a number 3, so the scheme, I'll touch on that a little with our cons, but just in terms of what routes you saw him run, I think he's a really good route runner, and then he's got pure speed. So all in on Jaylen Waddle. Hopefully this injury doesn't set him back too far.
Yeah, we get to see him run a little more routes this year than we did last year, which is part of why I think you get to see a little more of that. My big thing that I took away from this year that we didn't see as much of in previous seasons is that he shows no fear with the ball in the air. He has great body positioning, and he's been great with contested catches this season, which is just something you don't really see with burners like he is as a deep threat. He's done a really good job of just going up and honestly sacrificing his body, which, maybe isn't the best thing to be saying considering he's injured now, but he's been taking some big hits just to go up and get the football. And I will go on record right now as a little side comment. I think this year's Alabama wide receiver duo coming out is better than last year's.
Wow.
Here we go.
Okay.
I don't know about that one.
I like the hot take. I don't know if I agree with it, but I like the hot take. You guys mentioned it. He's a home run hitter. His second most yards per catch, like I mentioned before, at 19.1. Most yards per punt return at 19.3 in Alabama history. Speed, speed, speed. He's the fastest receiver in this draft, maybe even the country. Has reportedly run a 4.37 in the 40. Maybe even more impressive than his speed for me is his burst. I mean, some guys, it takes a long while to get going and build up, saying going from 0 to 60. Right when the quarterback says hike, he's at 60 miles an hour, man. I mean, he is immediately beating corners and creating separation because of how quickly he gets going. He separates with speed, but like Tate said, shows off some nice routes at times as well. He's a pretty shifty player, so not only will he run past you, but he could juke you out as well. They gave him a lot of screens and end arounds to get him in space. Like you guys mentioned before, the best returner in this draft, hands down. He'll start day one for an NFL team as its punt returner. He's incredibly dangerous when teams punt to him with his speed and agility, and college teams are better off, honestly, just punting it out of bounds when they're facing off against Alabama. The weaknesses for Jaylen Waddle, what do you think his weaknesses are besides the injury?
So I guess a couple things. One, he is a speedster, and he can gain leverage with the speed, but he doesn't really, like, I haven't really seen him like toast guys. He doesn't leave people in 10 yards behind him trailing on go routes. He kind of just gains leverage and then uses his body. Like I said, good at contested catches to catch deep balls. He is good. The thing about him being an elusive player is that he can make you miss and he can run by you. He doesn't really break tackles. He's not the biggest guy, and if you get your arms on him, he's going to go down. It's kind of the difference in why I will, at least until Rondale, if he plays poorly this year, which I kind of doubt, is why Rondale will be ahead of him, in my opinion. That guy's built like a rugby player. He's sick. But Jaylen is about the same size as Jerry Jeudy, so he's going to have to be elusive at the next level, and sometimes, if the speed and quickness doesn't translate, it could be difficult, and we have to see that because I don't know for certain that he's going to be able to be like Ruggs and just run go routes all the time.
So I think my biggest con, and it kind of, I know Max, you said without the injury, but I'm kind of saying my biggest con right now is the brief sample size as Bama's number one. Like I talked about, he was Bama's number 3 last year, so you saw him kind of run a lot of screens. Max said he gave him a lot of like reverses and sweeps and kind of things. Routes. You saw him really start to expand his route tree and run deeper routes down the field this year, which was awesome, and he was amazing at them. But the injury did cut it short, so I'm just not 100% sure I can put all of my faith in this smaller sample size. And then also versus the press, I have just some questions about his ability to get off the press. I think if you put your hands on him and don't let him, run at you and you sit off and off coverage, I think he kind of struggles versus the press more so that way. But I would say those are my 2 biggest cons against Waddle right now.
Yeah, you just said it. A lot of my fears had been kind of taken care of in the first 4 games this year, and I'm mad we only got 4 games of it. My initial thing is I wanted to see better routes. Like you said, a lot of bubble screens last year. This is a guy you just got to get in space and get the ball, but he's been way better downfield. He's made some absolutely crazy catches this year. Like Nick said, the body control has been great. Another thing that has been kind of toned down for me this year, he's been way better. He used last year going over the middle, just doing these quick routes, like you said, Tate. He was a little bit of a body catcher. He's been better with the hands this year. I really like that. So I really, the injury, it is what it is. We'll get into it in a second. I'm not too worried about it. I really don't have a lot of cons. He has definitely improved as a player from last year to this year, rather, and I would have liked to see a full season of it.
Yeah, for me, he's a bit undersized. He's only 5'10", 182. I got to disagree with you guys a little bit. Contested situations is one of my big cons with him. Henry Ruggs made a lot of really nice catches with his hands. Waddle does make some contested catches, but Peter, like you mentioned, he's a big body catcher when he does so. So I'm kind of worried about him, at the next level, making those contested catches. He's barely lined up wide in his career. He looks like he'll be a slot-only guy at the next level.
I don't know if I believe that, though. I don't know if he is a slot-only guy.
He's undersized, and he's basically only lined up in the slot so far. This season, last year, and all the years before, too. So, Nick Saban probably knows what he's doing with him, and he's basically only been a slot receiver for them. He's never been the top guy either at Alabama. He was 3rd on the team in receptions as a freshman, 4th as a sophomore last year, and 2nd this year before going down with an injury. I think, like you guys mentioned before, a lot of just basic routes for him. I want to see more route running from him at the next level. He shows off some high-level reps, but he relies on his speed and burst maybe too much right now. And he looks more, to me, like a big play receiver than one that you can rely on down to down. So, Tate, before we move on to the bottom line, we got to talk about this injury. He suffered a fractured ankle against Tennessee and underwent successful surgery on it. How much does this injury affect his draft stock for you?
He's definitely going to fall a couple spots. I saw something that he will be back for training camp based off when he got the surgery. So I don't think it'll have too much of an impact on him. He's going to fall a couple spots, maybe outside the top 10 on my big board. But I think ultimately he still goes within the top 15.
I mean, for me, I think in terms of my scouting, I think he falls back to wide receiver 3. I had him at 2 after the hot start to this season over Rondale. I think he's going to fall back to 3. I don't think I'm going to have him outside my top 12. If even I'm bumping him out, I haven't really decided yet. I do think, however, this is going to make NFL teams lower on him, especially if he can't work out throughout the offseason and the combine process. But for me, not too worried. Guys break their ankles. It happens.
It's an ankle. It's whatever. If it's a knee, it's a problem. If it's a hip, it's a problem. Ankle, you can play through ankle pain. It's, he's probably going to have it at some point in his career later on, but it really, even as an elusive guy who needs to use that foot a lot, it really doesn't matter unless you're like a 400-pound lineman. He's not, so not a worry for me. He's my number 9 player overall, number 3 wide receiver, right behind Rondale, who's awesome. Just bottom line is he really, for me, was kind of in that teens range, and he just, even in a limited sample size, he just showed me exactly what I wanted to see. In my opinion, like you guys said, you wanted a larger sample size. I don't know that we needed it. Like, he played the best opponent they're going to go against this year, which is Georgia, and he showed off in that game, So, in my opinion, he's a top 10 prospect. I think he's great. My comp it took a while for me to find this one because I'm like, who's a speedy receiver who's not going to be the most technical route runner and has some punt returning background? And I was like, I can't keep doing Washington guys, ex-Washington players in my comp. But unfortunately, my comp is Santana Moss because it's the only guy I can think
Jets
of
legend,
that
baby.
it reminds me of.
I like that. Yeah, going back to the injury, like he can probably actually return for the postseason. Like the recovery timeline for this is 6 to 8 weeks, and Nick Saban left the door open for that. 8 weeks from the injury is the SEC championship game. So maybe they can get him back for the playoff or the championship game even. We'll see. I don't think he will, but maybe he could, 6 to 8 weeks. I'm less worried about the long-term effects on the injury. I don't think this is something bad that'll come back to haunt him. Usually the ligament damage is when you got to worry about it. It's a fractured ankle that'll heal. We're finally starting to see him be a leading receiver on this team. Now that he's out, I expect Devontae Smith to really take charge. So because of that, Waddle has dropped below Smith for me. So, PJ, now you give your bottom line on Jaylen Waddle. Where's he ranked for you? Give a player comp for him. And do you have any potential team fits as well for Jaylen Waddle?
So before the injury, he was at 8 and Rondale was 9. In all honesty, those two are just probably going to flip, and they're just going to be right next to each other this whole time. So he's going to be wide receiver 3 behind Rondale, still in the top 10 for me. Santana Moss, Jet legend, Redskin legend, was my player comp. I'm not going to do that one anymore because he was one of my first favorite players, Santana Moss. Player comp, I think he's better than Hollywood Brown, but I feel like Ruggs is a little bit of a lazy comp. But so I think Hollywood is kind of a better take, at least college-wise. Hollywood didn't really return any kicks. He returned a couple of kicks last year for Baltimore in his rookie season, but doesn't do it anymore. Team fit, I'd love to see him in Miami, who has 2 really good outside receivers in Preston Williams and Devontae Parker. Give him back to Tua, and let's see what happens. Let's go.
Yeah. So again, classic Tate fashion, takes the player comp and puts his own little twist on it. I'm saying on the high end, we're like a Tyler Lockett kind of guy. And on the low end, I'm going just like Cordero Patterson, solid, been around, returns kicks. You know what he does. And then in terms of team fit, I'm looking at like, according to Tankathon's draft order, if the draft were to happen today, the Patriots would have the 11th pick. I would maybe, start to sniff there. Cincinnati at 7. They need someone with T. Higgins. AJ Green is old and kind of a bum. The Vikings at 6, maybe a bit high, probably too high, but there's sniffing of or rumors of them trading Adam Thielen. So I don't know. I agree with the Miami team fit, but maybe the Patriots at 11 too.
And Tate, where'd you rank him again?
That's a good question. Haven't changed it since the injury. Before the injury, he was 11. It'll probably be around there. He's certainly in the top 15 for me still.
So Nick, I know you gave us the bottom line on him, but what teams do you think he could fit the next level?
I jumped the gun on that, my bad. But
good.
They're picking 16 right now. I think they're gonna fall because I don't really think they beat Atlanta and Jacksonville, whatever. But the Lions, Kenny Golladay, they're not gonna pay him. He's gonna want to go somewhere else. Marvin Jones, he's older. He's probably not coming back either. They're gonna need a replacement. And I think they've really been missing a guy that like actually attracts Because like Galladay's a good player, but like Waddle is the type of guy that can motion around the backfield, run bubble screens, make the defense move pre-snap, and make them worry about stuff pre-snap. And they really need something like that because right now they're just kind of this boring offense that just needs a spark, and he would at least give them something to be creative with.
Yeah, especially with Kenny Galladay too, is like a bigger receiver, having like a speedier Waddle too. That would really complement Detroit really well. I like that. For Waddle, for me, he's a top 15 player on my board. Wide receiver 4 right now for me, behind Jamar Chase, Rondale Moore, and his teammate Devontae Smith. As for a player comp, PJ, I can't believe you stole it from me, man. I see a lot of Hollywood Brown in him. Both undersized, speedy receivers who are a big play waiting to happen. Both also, though, won't make that many highlight reel catches and will catch more with their bodies. But if you get them in space...
That's my thing. I think he's way better than Hollywood. I'm not a Hollywood guy. I've never been a Hollywood.
I don't know if he's way better, but I think he's like... I think they basically almost the same player. I think Waddle's a way better returner, so maybe he's a better prospect because of the returning. But I think they're very similar football players. Team fits, though. Patriots, you guys mentioned it. Nick, I think Washington, I know he kind of is the same-ish player as Terry McLaurin, but they could use a number 2, and if they're in that range, man, they could look to someone like Jaylen Waddle. Dolphins, Colts.
Rondale fits better, though.
Yeah, I know you're not giving up on that. I understand. And another thing, he kind of clashes with Jalen Reagor in Philadelphia, another speedy guy, but they need a receiver, and Jaylen Waddle is one of the best receivers in this draft. So I don't think they'll worry too much about the style of their receivers. They kind of just need playmakers back there right now. So, and also they need more speed besides just Jalen Reagor because they have a lot of big bodies there, and they could use some more smaller, speedier guys besides just Jalen Reagor. So that's all we got on Jaylen Waddle, who unfortunately will probably not see the rest of the season with a fractured ankle, but we will see him on draft night, most likely go in the top 15 and be a star at the next level in the NFL. So please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Reddit. Comment what you think, though, too, about Jaylen Waddle. Where does he rank for you among the receivers? Follow our Twitter at BoomerBustDraft and check out our website below. So for PJ Clark, Tate Sigworth, and Nick Merriam, I'm Max Chadwick. Have a great night.